And we are live. So I was just saying before we went on air a second ago that I'm making a bit of a cognitive leap today because yesterday I was talking about a show where the main antagonists, who are also the protagonists, were, like I said, the Manson family on steroids. So yesterday we were talking about Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects. And this week I find, or today, a day later, not even a week, 24 hours exactly, I find myself talking about a Tim Burton movie. But that's what this show is about. I just want to start out by saying that, and I say it sometimes. We try to find quality movies that go through a number of genres. So predominantly it's horror, but we're also I'm also open to fantasy, sci-fi, thrillers. When you had initially started talking about the possibility of coming on the show, I think I had made up a short list of films.
Yeah,
and it was like I think The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. And I think I had Lord of the Flies. I was kind of hoping you would grab at that one because I wouldn't mind talking about that. And I think we had Terminator 3, and then we had this. And I remember this was the one you had responded to, and you're just like, well, this isn't a horror movie. And I said, well, it doesn't matter because I'm looking for intelligent movies. And that certainly qualifies. So I'd like to welcome to the show first-time guest Jocelyn Jefferies. Welcome. Thank you for coming and hanging out for a little bit this evening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn Jefferies, as just mentioned. I know Lip through my parents, who, if you want to get into all of that, but they all know each other from when they were younger. And then I have been doing film for about 4 years now, and I also am an intern for Arts at NJ, and some of you may be here from me posting on there, and that would be super cool. And if so, comment below so we can all say hi. And even if you aren't, comment below so we can say hi. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. And so I'm super excited to talk about this movie because I haven't seen it in a super, super long time because it's one of my mom's favorite movies. And so the bits I remembered were the end when the fish was let loose, but not the full part, just literally the visual of the big fish being in the water, and then that one scene in Inspector, the first scene. Those were the only things I remembered from this movie.
Okay, so I guess that means you're ready to talk. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, if that's cool with you.
Let's get to it. So I'm not 100% sure that the intro music that we standardly use applies to this film necessarily, but it's the podcast intro, so that's what you get. Hold on, we got a comment here. It's Eric. Eric's in the house. Eric is always in the house. He's a friend of the show, and he says he's very excited for this one. Not just one of my favorite Burton movies, but a favorite movie in general. Yeah, and I think we both know exactly what you're talking about. And then is this, I'm not sure which Jeffries.
This is Jillian Jefferies. She goes by JP on the internet.
Okay, so this is Jillian Jefferies. Hey, Jillian, what's up? What's up? Good movie. And unlike our host, I'm a big fan of Burton-specific weirdness. So let's get into that for a second. Yeah, you're right. I am not a Tim Burton fan, but I'm a huge fan of this movie. It's a favorite of mine. I don't know that it fits quite into a top 10 or something like that, but I mean, if you mention it, yeah, it just automatically kind of makes you smile. My first exposure to Burton, I think, goes back to like 1989 when he did that movie Batman. And I don't know if you've ever seen that, but at the time, this was the Batman movie.
I got to I watched it the other day with my family, and it was truly wild.
It's about as silly and idiotic as you could possibly imagine, but for its time, it was the first.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first, and people just went crazy. So clearly, there was a thirst for comic book movies, and I guess Burton got to it first with this Batman. Now, every other week there's a new Batman movie or something like that. But we all thought it was crazy. Now, you couldn't pay me to watch it, because what I say all the time is that what was cool back then doesn't always hold up now. And so, that's kind of where I'm parking my car with this one. We got Eric here. My wife isn't a fan of Burton films that are Batman related, and she really enjoys Big Fish, and that says something. Yeah, it's an exceptional film.
Mm-hmm.
Burton does this sort of absurdist, magic realism style of directing, which for me, at times can wear a little thin. I mean, I'm hosting a movie on horror movies, hosting a podcast on horror movies. So it's not exactly my cup of tea, but, this is just an exceptional story. It's an exceptional story. It's an exceptional script. These are extraordinary performances. And those are, when you put those three things together, and I talk about this all the time on the show, I'm going to be a fan. Yeah. It really doesn't make a difference what the genre is. Did you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I really liked Tim Burton. I liked him more when I was younger. My first film experience with him was actually Corpse Bride, and then Nightmare Before Christmas. Corpse Bride has always been my favorite Tim Burton, but I've seen almost everything he's made, even like weird ones like Ed Wood, like.
That's not a bad movie.
Oh, it's not a bad movie at all.
No.
It's just like a deep cut for Tim Burton.
It's a true story, which makes it, a little less able to. He's a little less able to manipulate it in his usual way.
Yeah, but something I appreciate about this was that it didn't necessarily feel. It felt like a cross between a Tim Burton and a Baz Luhrmann. Okay. Because it reminded me a lot stylistically of Moulin Rouge, and then. Which was weird. Like there were certain bits, and it might have just been the main actor being the same actor.
Ewan McGregor, yeah.
Yeah, Ewan McGregor. But I think it was also just based on like the lighting aspects and then the surrealist aspects. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it's really cool, and I'm glad I got to see it again from when before I was like cognizant as a human being to now.
Let me start out by saying we have a mutual friend by the name of Ed Ferrante, and I'll say personally that 85. If I say that I'm not going to enjoy a movie without even looking at it, I'm going to say that 85% of the time I'm right, because you trust your gut, you trust your gut instincts, and I rarely am wrong. And when you're get to the advanced age of 500, then, you can kind of pick, and you're like, no, I can just look at a trailer and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to watch that. On two separate occasions, I've been wrong about that. And those were two movies that Ed recommended. One of them was this, and he said, you're going to love it. And I said, no, I won't. And I ended up going back and watching it, and it was great. The second time I went through that with Ed was The Shawshank Redemption. And for that, I only put up a fight for like 10 minutes. And I said, I made a logical argument. I said, I don't want to watch a depressing prison movie, which is what it kind of is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you just don't see, that's like the most superficial aspects of that movie. Yeah. And when it was over, I actually thanked him. But this was another movie that he had highly recommended, and I said, Ed, I'm not watching this. I'm not a Burton fan, and he was right about that. And I don't know if he's watching this now. I invited him on the show, but yeah, Ed, you were right, and I was wrong. Now, it's the only time I'm going to say it too. So,
that's everyone's favorite things to hear. It's not just us ladies, for sure.
Well, I'll edit it out later in the upload, so don't worry about it. Now, this movie was initially set to be directed by Steven Spielberg. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. That would be a very different film.
It would be a very different film, and he was in the middle, I think, of working on Minority Report. I don't know if you've seen that movie. That's a really solid science fiction movie.
Yeah.
And the role of Walter, I think, the father, was going to be Jack Nicholson. Which, I mean, Jack Nicholson, yeah, I don't see that working. Jack Nicholson is lovable, but for a completely different, series of reasons. But Spielberg ended up passing, and Tim Burton stepped in and took the role of director. And I think part of what invested him in it was that, I mean, this movie came out in 2003. In 2000, he had lost his own father, who he wasn't particularly close to, but it affected him, very deeply. And then 2 years later, he lost his mother.
Oh, wow.
So, for anybody that's lost a parent, it takes a little while before things start to level out again. And then, for one right on top of the other, I think the themes of this story, it's pretty obvious why it would have grabbed him.
It would stick with him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very timely, for what he was experiencing.
I'm not personally like a huge fan of Spielberg. I've pretty much seen not every one of his movies. I've seen like the bigger ones. And that's like a really weird thing to like say because he's like a renowned filmmaker, but he, things which he does in his films, I don't particularly enjoy. And then also I'm not much of a sci-fi fan. Sure. And so those together like make it like difficult sometimes for me to watch, but this was really cool because it felt like it was written for Tim Burton. And now that I know the background of it, it feels like that even more. Like it has something which I noticed with Tim Burton, which is something that I as I grew older started to kind of dislike with his films, was that they don't have strong stories sometimes because he is primarily visual. This does not. This has a very strong story. Yeah. By all means, it has a very strong story, but it has an episodic setup, which means that people who are not typically very good at handling big, like very like strong stories, they can do like the episodic layers, and then that will fit better with them. And I think it was a perfect choice, and I think it really worked really super well.
Well, it's based on a book that was written by a guy named Daniel Wallace. I have never read anything by Daniel Wallace, but then the screenplay was adapted by a guy named John August, and he has a few credits. If you've ever seen that animated movie Titan AE, he did both of those awful Charlie's Angels movies from like 15 years ago or something like that. He did have an uncredited rewrite for the Iron Man script for Marvel. So the first MCU, Robert Downey Jr. 2008 Iron Man. He has the guy who wrote this has an uncredited rewrite for that. So he's not a huge name necessarily, but he did a fantastic job just writing this out. And you're right. I think, I wouldn't have said episodic. I would have said, it's a series of vignettes, where you're sort of looking into this man's past.
Well, that's
trying to figure out what's true and what's not.
Yeah, that's the structure of like I guess in filmmaking terms. But yes, it's set up in a vignette style, which is so cool because it was very consistent with like how it was set up. What did you think about how it was a little blurrier during those scenes? And then the colors were heightened like a rom-com. Like it was blurry and then the colors were heightened.
I don't know that I actually caught that. Give me an example.
So like specifically in the scene when they first go to Spectre.
Okay.
But in most of the like throwback scenes, I was trying to like place a system that they had it, and that's what it looked like, was that it was blurred behind the non-focus. And I don't remember what that's called. There's a name for it, and it's a certain lens you have to use.
Okay.
But then it had like the blur, and then the colors were heightened, and so it felt like, and then at the end, like that scene, that's like one of the reasons it's so emotionally affecting, because it's switching back and forth between the harsh reality of like the blue light and him lying in bed, and and then it going back to what the story is and what his legend is. And
which largely there was a lot of truth there. I mean,
Absolutely.
there was embellishment. I mean, and that's kind of the irony of it. I mean, it's this reconciliation story about this father and the son, but the son, he loves his father, but he resents the hell out of him, I think,
Hmm.
because he feels that he's never told the truth about who he is, because all the stories his father has been telling his entire life couldn't possibly be real. You
Yeah.
know, like no one could be like this huge. Um, but you know, in the end, you know, you find out that his father did embellish, but he was actually, to a large extent, truthful about a lot of the experiences that he had,
Hmm.
which was kind of cool. And I think he had this notion that his father, who was sort of charming, was
Hmm.
kind of using that as a way to keep people at a distance.
Yeah.
You know,
But that's
you
just
weren't
his
you
perspective.
weren't yeah, you weren't going to see the real me. I was just going to keep spinning these fantastic tall tales that everybody loved except
Mhm.
his own son.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie because it focuses on perspective, which
Yeah,
is a thing to notice. Like everyone has a very prominent, distinct perspective, except for the wife does, but it's not highlighted. Cheryl was her name, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't catch. Okay.
But I only remember because I felt so much relief when Danny DeVito's character finally told him. But
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
yeah, but it's about perspectives, and it's something that I really appreciate because when you write a script, you how I write them at least is I write it out and then it ends up being just me talking to me, just talking to me, talking to me, but as this character. And then I have to go back through and differentiate the speaking styles because my speaking style is different than yours versus Ed's versus my mother. You know, we all have different speaking styles, we all have different ways of expressing ourselves, we all have our favorite words that we say over and over and over again.
Well,
And
go
yeah,
ahead. No,
no,
there's
I just really wanted to point out perspective and what your thoughts are on that.
well, there's perspective, but what I saw was generally everybody was in the camp but the son, you know,
Mm,
and that most people accepted that. Okay, you know, like when he starts telling the story about the parrots in the Congo that speak fluent French, you know, and like you know, the son's trying to like stick him, you know, and he's like, well, you know, my wife's been to the Congo. She went there last year, and he just looks up and he says, "Oh, so you already know?"
Yeah.
You know, like he's just unflappable.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's that in terms of perspective, most people accept that there's embellishment to these tales, and maybe they aren't even true,
Hmm.
but they're kind of general. What they are in agreement on is that they're opposed to, you know, the son kind of constantly poking and prodding at his dad for
Hmm.
this sort of factual, because you know there's this other argument. Sure, you don't want to, you know, tell your whole story as sort of a mythology,
Hmm.
but on the other hand, do you really want to live in like absolute truth and take all the magic away, you know, that his dad has like laid out over decades, you know, that clearly his wife just loves, you know,
Yeah.
his daughter-in-law loves, you know, everybody loves this guy, you
Hmm.
know, but then you've got, you know, the person who should be closest to him who just kind of, for his own reasons, you know, for I guess, you know, to sort of, because he's blinded by his own resentments, who just kind of wants to tear that away. And I thought it was kind of ironic that the son had become a storyteller. He had become a reporter,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
he became like a factual, you know, storyteller. You know, he's working for like UPI, United Press, or something like that. So, you know, he's not telling tall tales. It's just, you know, the type and, you know, just the facts, ma'am, and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that we both got like different perspectives on it on ourselves
Yeah.
because that immediately led me to thinking like a question that I wrote in here, which I was considering like what you were thinking about it was should you I wrote verbatim because I took notes because I wanted to not really miss anything, but it said let someone believe their own world, and that's exactly what like I want. I guess your perspective on that, like because for me, I find that there's only a certain level we can let people believe their own world, but that's socially like that's exactly what they're saying is that like we want them to be realistic. We want was the dad's name Walter?
Yes.
Yeah. So we want Walter to believe his own they want him to still have his life and still have his fantasies and still have these things, but they also want him to like be in the world. And then the son is way too much like, you need to be in the world, and then like people were way too much, you can do whatever you need. And it's so interesting, the different perspectives in that sense.
Well, that was just the whole point, though. I mean, he had made it through his whole life. He was I mean, it's not like, you're dealing with somebody who's like a meth addict, who's like just completely like, living in a delusional kind of, state about, his or her personal reality. This was a man who had been married and, happily married for decades. He owned a home. He raised a family. He had a job. He just said that, this was the reality of my life. When I went away on this, hey, I bought a town. Hey, I met this colossus in my hometown. So I don't think that, anybody wanted to take that away from him except for his son, who was probably in a bit of a panic himself because he was about to become a father. And not to mention the fact that his father is dying. This is the last chance he's going to have as an opportunity to understand his father. And, he's probably driven a little bit more than is the standard case. Hold on a second. We got some more comments here. We got Eric. That's what I love about this film. You don't know what is real and what wasn't concerning his father's life. Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of clarification at the end when you get to the funeral and, these sorts of things, or when, when he goes to visit Helen Bonham Carter. Yeah, when he goes to see the piano teacher. It's just, Finney was so great for this. I thought that this was a master's level class, that masterful performance by Albert Finney. I love Albert Finney. He's in another great movie that came out a little bit later, directed by Ridley Scott, called A Good Year, with Russell Crowe, and he's Russell Crowe's uncle, very much along the lines of this type of character that he's playing now. This just sort of larger than life, over the top kind of guy. And I mean, to me, he was just a breath of fresh air, and all this sort of stale, day to day, he's the type of person, that makes life interesting. I thought it was a great character. I personally, I didn't want any of that, taken from him. And you saw, I think, on a couple of occasions where, the son was kind of poking at him about it. It didn't go very well. It turned into arguments. But before I want to get into it, we have just a fantastic cast. We have Ewan McGregor. I could watch Ewan McGregor all day, no problem. We got Albert Finney. We got Jessica Lange. She's just fantastic as his wife. We got Marianne Cotillard. I'm not French, but she's just a fantastic actor. And Billy Crudup. And of course, we've got Danny DeVito as that was the picture I had to take because it's just so classic Danny DeVito.
Did I kill anyone after that?
Yeah, a rabbit, but I think that rabbit was already dead. So you've just got, you've also got, and I think this matters. The film sort of starts out with the first tall tale, I think, is, him being told how he's going to die.
Eric just commented, don't forget Steve Buscemi.
Oh, that's right, Steve Buscemi. Yeah, he's the bank robber. Thank you. Steve Buscemi. Yeah, you can't go wrong with this many people. And I've talked about this before. Sometimes you get a movie that's just not well directed and it's not well written, but the strength of the performers can sort of lift it up. But when you get everything firing, the script, the direction, the performances, I mean, you've got a home run, and that's what you've got here. But the story starts out with him, sort of having an understanding of how he was going to die, and you don't know if that's true or not. But me being erring on the side of the, I can't believe I'm erring on the side of the Burton absurdist kind of thing.
It's just so much fun.
It is, and it makes me believe that that kind of emboldened him to live this unreasonable kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't fall under the normal, with the normal pitfalls and trappings. There are so many things that happened in that movie, like when he leaves the town. He's too big for the town.
Mm-hmm.
The giant is too big for the town. That he's intended for larger things. That when he talks about the goldfish, the goldfish stays in a small pond, in a small bowl. It's going to stay small.
I wanted to talk about that, and also
Yeah.
they said later, they said at one point that he was thirsty, and I appreciated that because that added to the thirstiness for like literal water because of the motif of the hints that he's going to be a fish at the end, but then that he is the big fish, but then also he's thirsty as in like ambitious.
Yeah.
And that's just so cool. And also I wanted to talk about you mentioned that if you would like to know how to die, and I would you like to know how you would die? Like how
I couldn't answer that until I was in the moment. It's not one of those things where I don't think anybody could honestly answer that kind of question. So it's not something I think about.
Yeah, I was thinking about it like all after I watched this movie, and it's so strange because it poses a different philosophy than most people would. Like, it poses the philosophy that is the opposite of most people, because most people would go, no, I don't want to. I just want to live my life and then be surprised when I die.
Roll the dice.
Like, I'd like to know when I die so I can do crazy stuff and know it's not my time.
And if it rolls your way. I mean, that one guy found out he's going to die on the toilet. So, I mean, he becomes an angry jerk.
Yeah.
That one guy, he sees he's going to die at a fairly young age, on the toilet, really stupid, and, not memorable or, enviable way to go. And guess what? He becomes like a jealous, violent jerk the rest of his life. So the coin could just as easily flip on the other side. Hold on a second. We've got some comments from Jillian. Oh, she disagrees. She's seen some all-star cast train wrecks. Well, don't be negative.
That's probably her favorite genre, is to go on Netflix and then find films which have like a good cast and then see like if they're good or not, and then she comes back and she's like, this was really good or this was terrible, let's watch it together. Either way, we're gonna watch it together.
Netflix is full of it's full of train wrecks.
Yeah.
They've got every movie except the movies I want to watch. The analogies are such joy. Yeah. Jocelyn, it makes me think of our Merlin insight. All future storytelling is misleading.
Yeah, so Merlin, if you guys haven't seen that, it's a show which I don't know, was like in the early 2000s, and anytime that there was like future telling, like you looked in a crystal ball or something, it always gave like a fragment of the information, and so it didn't help them, it hurt them, because then they would try to avoid it aggressively, and then it just never helped them out, and it was never the full information.
That's a common thread. You get every piece of information except the one that you need. That goes back to like Faust, where he makes all the deals with Mephistopheles, and Mephistopheles tells him pretty much everything except what he actually needs to know to be successful. Yeah, so that's the deal it's the classic deal with the devil. Mm-hmm. You get everything except the vital piece that's actually going to save you. Mm-hmm. That is knowingly withheld. So that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't know until you.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and it's like those who would it depends on your philosophy on like death, essentially, which we don't even need to get into. We can move on. But that's always what it ends up being, is like your philosophy on what death is, because the guy who dies on the toilet, he had been avoiding it his whole life once he saw it. But then when Walter, he found out he was like, yeah, it's just gonna happen one day, and that's fine, and I'll just do crazy stuff until then. Yeah. But like, so it depends on, they took different philosophies from it.
I mean, there's just these recurring things, that he's never been a reasonable man. Mm-hmm. There's that scene where he and the giant split off, where he's going to take the shortcut through through the haunted woods, which takes him to Spectre. I think it leads him to Spectre. And I think he says the long way is easier, and that it's very clear cut, and there's very little chance of running. There's less chance of you running amiss, but it's longer. He takes the shortcut. He gets bristled up and tangled and all these sorts of things, but it leads to. Now, I'm not saying I advocate for that one way or the other, but along the themes of the story, clearly, the unreasonable path is what's led him to.
There's a line in a show called Pippin, which the show is pretty good, but there's a line in a song called Corner of the Sky, and he goes, "Don't you see I want my life to be something more than long?" And that like applies perfectly to that, in that is a line that would be said by Walter. Like, it's, yeah.
Well, I mean, you think about it, when something is taking a long time, it's usually not a very pleasant. It's an old argument for relativity. The things that you enjoy happen quickly. When you're having fun, or you're having a fun weekend, or your summer goes by really fast, that's because you've been enjoying it. I mean, are the seconds along the clock moving any faster? No, absolutely not. But your perception of them and the speed at which things seem to move are faster. When you are experiencing something that is very painful, 30 minutes can seem like a lifetime. Yeah. So, there's an old argument there also, in terms of just, basic relative. And I think that's what Einstein argued relativity was, and he gave a couple specific examples about that kind of thing. So, he's taken the, a bit of the thornier path, but it's leading him to, a bigger reward, so to speak. Which is something that I think, if we come back to the overarching theme of reconciliation, is something that his son doesn't figure it out until the end. And I was glad that the story ended in such a way that he does figure it out before it's too late. And
he can demonstrate him sewing up the tapestry again. He can demonstrate that reconciliation in taking part in what his dad had done his whole life.
Because I mean, you wouldn't know this, but I mean, when your parents get older, I mean, they come to lean on you for help. And a lot of times, what they have, is their stories. And I mean, that's not a tragedy or anything like that, but that it just ends up being true. That kind of thing.
That dynamic is one that is self-repeating.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, unfortunately, the small tragedy of this story is that he lost a lot of time not realizing what a treasure trove of stories, his father had.
Giving him this whole time.
Yeah, he had been giving him these amazing stories his whole life, and he had sort of turned his back on them. But circumstances warranted that in the end, he was able to, put away his own anger at his dad and sort of embrace them. There's one scene that towards the end that I really love, and it was with the doctor, Robert Guillaume, where he actually tells, I can't remember what Billy Crudup's name is, what the character's name is.
Oh, I don't remember.
But he actually tells him the story of how he was born. When his father had made up this elaborate story about this was happening and that, and the man was just like, well, your father was stuck out of town, and back then men didn't go into the birthing room, and that was it. And he looks at him, he goes, it's not very elaborate, is it? So you have this choice between what are the facts, as opposed to what it is that that what he wants. He actually receives what it is that he wants, only to find out that it's not really what he thinks it's not really satisfying. It's not what he thinks it's going to be, which is a common truth, for people. You obsess on something and you want something, and then you want it, and then you get it, and then you find out, wow, that really wasn't what I thought it was going to be at all. It can be a disappointment to you when you just fixated on one thing. So, there are a number of factors that, sort of have to help this man melt his heart, because, it's sort of stony with his father. They're not talking much at the dinner table. They're best, managing some small talk here and there. But if it ever gets into anything beneath the surface, it turns into an argument. And so, all these other external sort of things have to happen, because everybody gets it but him. My favorite scene in the whole movie is the bedroom story between Marianne Cotillard and Albert Finney, where he tells the story about his mother's been humping the milkman.
Yeah.
And she's enraptured by the story about the crow and all these people are going to die. And then at the last second, he yanks the rug out from under her. And her response is appropriate. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
He's been pulling her leg all this time, made extra, important because he is sick and unwell, and it doesn't look like he's going to make it. And then at the last second, he's just like, nope. The floor is mine, and she just, busts out laughing, and I just thought that was a perfect, summation of, who this guy was.
It's a well set up story, and we can't hate well set up stories at all. Something to note also, I really liked Dr. Bennett's character in this throughout the entire thing, because he was the doctor, and like incarnations of him were the doctor through all times there were ever doctors shown. So when he was born, it looked like he looked like a younger version of him was the doctor who delivered the father. And it's just because
he goes skidding across the floor.
Yeah. Because it's just because that's the story. If it's getting told from the perspective of the son, that's the only doctor he's ever known, really. Yeah. Especially when he was a kid. Yeah. And so that's the doctor when he says, oh, yeah, and then the doctor delivered me and I flung across the floor. That's the only doctor that he's ever known. So that's what he pictures. And I love that so much because it gets into perspective again. And it's like a small detail, but like this movie is full of small details. I filled 6 pages with small details that I appreciated.
Oh, dear. Okay. Would you like to list a few of them? I hate for you to put all those to waste. Wait, hold on. We got one more here from Jillian, your mom. The daughter-in-law is fully. Yeah, he makes a comment in bed. He's like, "I'm not going to argue with a French woman about romance." He's like, "I'm not that stupid. I'm not going to have that conversation." And he's absolutely right. So, everybody's on board except for the kid, who eventually, he does.
Except for the one who got all the stories, who had this treasure trove. You don't realize what you have until you've lost it.
Yeah.
And then that's what it is.
Well, he's forced at the end by the death of his father to, to sort of help him finish the last story, because I think in the end his father's, he has to lean on his son, to help him transition. When he's going to die, and what's he going to say? No, So it's just a fantastic movie. And I think part of the reason that I don't like Burton movies is because he seems to be on this. He was for a while on this kick with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then. Did he do Alice in Wonderland or something?
Oh, yeah, he did Alice in Wonderland, and he did like 3 of them, and they were all okay. I saw the second one in theaters, but it's just like they were all kind of like his most recent stuff is very like, but his older stuff is pretty good, except for Sleepy Hollow, which I have.
I love Sleepy Hollow.
You love that? Okay.
How can you not love Sleepy Hollow?
I don't know.
It's a horror comedy. People have been dying to have me do that on the show, and I've just kind of been holding up. I think I have a copy of it on Blu-ray. I have to go check.
Wow. Well, maybe I'll have to watch it again and let you know what I think, because when I saw it originally, I didn't really enjoy it. But I was also like about Dark Shadows, except for I thought it was pretty fun. Like I thought they were both like pretty fun, but I didn't really enjoy them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Eric's here. Not going to lie, the final story told by Billy Crudup to Albert Finney gets me every time. It's all in Billy's performance. Billy Crudup, an understated performance here, but Billy Crudup is always great. He's always fantastic. It's hard not to be overshadowed by Albert Finney, which he kind of is, but that doesn't make his performance any less
Valuable.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jillian here from a review on the brink of his own family life beginning. Will does not want to be the kind of father Edward has been to
Yeah.
him, which, yeah, that's a fantastic review.
Yeah.
He's in a panic. He wants answers about how to be a father.
And which he
From
never
a man
got.
who has never told him, or he believes has never told him, anything that was actually true. And, even believing perhaps that his father was stepping out on his mother, that he didn't want to be with them. Because, again, it never occurred to him that most of those things could actually be true. Nobody could live a life like that, I guess without, having a red cape with an S on it or something like that. But he did. He did. A lot of what he said was true. There was some play, some embellishment here and there. But, I mean, his dad was just one of those guys. Sleepy Hollow is perfect for Halloween time viewing. Sweeney, people keep talking to me about Sweeney Todd.
Is really, really good. I really like musicals, but it was, I didn't really like the musical before I saw the movie, and now I only listen to the movie soundtrack, even though the performances, like, vocally are not, like, stellar. They're not bad. They're just not stellar.
Yeah, just because you act doesn't mean you can sing.
But the acting singing, they really, you feel the characters in the songs.
All right, so wait a minute. Is this like Les Mis where like everybody's singing all the time?
Okay.
I usually don't like those.
I can't even get into Les Mis.
Well, let's stick to Sweeney Todd then. Is it a musical?
Yes, it's a musical. It was a Broadway musical, but it
But the Burton version is a musical too?
It is a musical. They're both musicals.
I don't like musicals.
But if you were to ever watch it, I could come on again and we could go through it and I could guide you through the parts which are non-musical.
Well, maybe we should stick to Sleepy Hollow, and if we get through Sleepy Hollow, we can come back for Sweeney Todd. If we each bite the bullet on a particular movie that we're a little leery of.
Sounds good. That sounds like a good trade to me.
That would be fine. I mean, it's just if you're watching this. This isn't the type of movie that I typically cover. Like I said yesterday, I was here talking about Rob Zombie and just what awful people were in that. That there were no good people in it, kind of, sort of. But, within that particular genre, it's a fantastic movie. Within this particular genre, this is a fantastic movie. Watch it. If you see this on the replay, go check it out. This is a worthwhile movie. I think it's playing right now on HBO.
HBO Max, yeah.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max. I have a DVD copy, but I was too lazy to get up and grab the DVD, so I just finagled. No, you think that's bad? Yesterday, the guy I had on, my buddy Bill, we did The Devil's Rejects, and I don't want people to come on this show that have to spend money to screen a movie. It's an out, even if it's $3 or $4. Yeah. I don't want people to do that. If you have it, then that's fine. If you're local and you want to come over, we could screen it together and then do the live stream later. That's fine too. But he told me he had spent, and rented the movie, and I'm like, bro, I told you before, I don't want people doing that. Just talk to me. And he said, no, the problem was I have a copy of the DVD, but I just didn't feel like getting up off the couch. So I ended up spending the $3.99 to rent it rather than just get up and walk across the living room. And I'm like, well, Jesus Christ, I should have charged you $8 for being that damn lazy. For God's sake.
I had a DVD of it, and I thought I brought it down because I'm currently in a different place than my regular home, for context for everyone. And so I was looking through all my bags, and I was asking my partner, and he was like, I don't know where it is. I'm trying to find it. Are you sure you brought it down? And I'm like, yeah, I brought it. But at the end of the day, we just used my computer and we watched it together. And he really liked it. It was interesting watching this with him, because it was a lot of the love scenes were his favorites, just because I think it was just because he was with me and he was like, oh, like.
Yeah, it's very well written. I mean, he wait, what's the name of this? Hold on. John August. John August. He wrote a hell of a romantic, screenplay. He wrote it very well. He doesn't have a lot of, Charlie's Angels, Titan AE, Iron Man. You wouldn't think that this could, but who knows? He's writing against type, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
So fantastic stuff.
We have 2 Sweeney Todd comments on here before we get too far away.
Oh, yeah. Hold on.
Yeah.
Well acted, and it is a musical. Yes, sorry. Yeah. Okay. And give it a shot, bud. It's not 100% all singing. Great performances, especially Alan Rickman. Well, if it's Alan Rickman, then I'll have to give it a second look, because I could watch Alan Rickman, play a tree branch.
Alan Rickman is one of the main characters in it. He's really good. He's quite threatening. It's great.
Okay. Fantastic.
There's a couple lines that I really liked in this. But if you had something you brought up, but I wanted to also bring up a line. But we'll get to that.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so there's a couple lines that I really appreciated, but I've been nothing but myself since the day I was born, and it's your failing, not mine, to not see that.
Yeah.
And that's such an interesting thing, because I think both of us are very dynamic people, and we both live in our own waves, like both me and you. And so I wanted your perspective on that line, because it was something that I struggled with a couple years ago, kind of getting into my own wave again after getting pushed out of it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm not sure I understand.
No, so he says, I've been nothing but myself, and essentially he's saying I don't need to feel bad about being myself. And when his son pushes him,
right? Because what I took that to mean was that his son doesn't believe him.
Yeah,
I don't think and I think his father's trying to tell him, this is who I actually am. These are the things I've actually done. I'm not going to get into absolute truth with you. I don't know that his father owes him that. And would we want to live in a world where everyone just spoke in absolute truths? I mean, people would be murdering each other in the streets, that kind of thing. But I think, again, the son, he can't see through his own resentments to see that he's kind of he's hurting his dad. I don't think, maybe he does mean to a little bit, but I don't think to the extent that it actually sort of becomes that way. But I mean, I think his father's just telling him, look, I've told you who I am. This is who I am. It's not my fault that you don't believe me.
Yeah.
I can't contort myself, into this. I got up, I had a cup of coffee, and I shined my shoes today, and I did that kind of thing. Because to be honest, I mean, even if he did make up that kind of story, that wouldn't be who he actually is. That's not who his father is.
Yeah, even if his stories are embellished, they're still his stories that have been embellished through his mind, which is then inherently him.
Yeah,
whether it's the truth with the capital T.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a story if it just turned this would be an unwatchable story if he sort of got to the bottom of it and then found that his father had lied about everything.
Yeah.
And then it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be covering it, because I'm like, I'm not talking about that movie. That movie's awful. It's just that's
it wouldn't have the mysticism that
it wouldn't have like your mother said, it wouldn't have the romanticism.
Yeah.
Which his like I said, everybody but him is on board. Everybody but him is on board, and it's not just everybody in the film. You get the sense that this has been going on for a long time. Like everybody throughout Billy Crudup's life has been on board with Billy Crudup.
There's a line he says is, "We never talked about not talking," and that's very similar, like that, where nobody ever really talked about that. Him and his father never talked and had like this division because it was opposite of everyone else.
But I mean, again, I think that what we find out in the end was his father was talking.
He just wasn't listening.
He's been telling everybody the same. It's not like, he comes home and tells one person one thing and then he goes out of the house and tells somebody else something completely different. He's been telling the same story for, 30 years. The son probably is they're in their early 30s or something like that, So he's been saying the same things to everybody, for his entire life. And, the only person who just refuses to accept it is his son. So yeah, I don't think it's that dad has not been talking. It's just that
Yeah.
the kid just he refuses to accept it.
Mhm.
Hold on. Great episode tonight. Jocelyn was a great guest.
Oh,
There you go. There you go.
thank you. Hopefully, I will be back on again to talk about Sleepy Hollow and then possibly Sweeney Todd.
Quite possibly. Was there another line you wanted to cover?
Oh, I'm sure. So
Not 6 pages worth.
No, of course not. There was two ones that I thought were super interesting, and then these are pretty much all of my notes. But they could be. I think that this one's weird because it just poses a very specific stance. I think one of my favorite my favorite lines in movies are when they pose a very specific stance, and evil is just lacking in social niceties. That's such a specific stance to take, and I have to meditate on it because I'm not sure I agree.
I don't think I think he said a lot. I said a lot of the things that people consider to be evil
Yes.
or something else. I can't remember what the other term was. A lot of the things that people consider to be evil or bad or something like that are just
lacking in social niceties. But either way, it's a specific stance. And it's fascinating because it reminds me of that line in Ratatouille where he goes, the new needs friends. It's similar in that it's like...
Yeah, everybody just needs a little love.
Yes. And like everyone needs a little bit of social addition, and then it'll be exactly what we need, which is so interesting.
This doesn't apply in yesterday's movie.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't. It absolutely does not. It's an awful movie. I wouldn't. Please don't watch it. You won't sleep for a year. But it doesn't apply. But here, within this context, it does. So again, it's not evil. It's that I think there are people that are just sort of isolated out there, probably just need a hug or something like that, and that kind of thing, and need someone to say, hey, I recognize, you're okay. It's okay. These people just need somebody to tell them that it's okay and you're still my friend, and they don't really mean it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hold on. It was that night I discovered that most things you consider evil or wicked are simply lonely and lacking in. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Simply lonely and lacking in social niceties. So, I mean, there are a lot of isolated people out there that are good people, and they probably come off as grouchy, and mean or whatever. But and maybe they're just missing. They're just missing out on some things that a lot of other people take for granted. We should bring Jillian on as the producer for a future show. So I'll have to, some sort of stipend or something like that. We'll have to hook her up.
She would love that.
What else? There was one that I think he said, you do your best to corrupt your children, and despite everything, they come out perfectly normal.
Fine,
So I think that was Dad's lament. I tried to turn you into a bohemian, sort of, tall tale teller.
Child.
Yeah, and you just turned into a button down, sort of, straight laced, kind of kid.
Yeah.
But,
that the line which she just mentioned to me reminded me of the 2019 Joker. I can't even. I appreciated it. It's, I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. And I don't know if you saw that. And we can move past.
I own it on DVD. I own it on Blu-ray.
Nice. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. And of course, Joaquin Phoenix, excellent actor. But that line reminded me of him, like the entire thesis of Joker, and being like, I've had a really bad day, and it takes one bad day to make anyone go crazy. And then that just brings me to the idea that the Joker is another unreliable narrator, especially in the 2019 Joker film.
Oh, yeah. There's so much. Did that actually happen? Has he been institutionalized all this time? I'm not that much of a, where I have to dig 20,000 leagues beneath the sea. I generally believe that what we saw was what happened. That's generally my take. I don't think that Todd Phillips was trying to play 4D chess with us or something like that. I gave up on 4D chess with Obama. So during the first year, he's playing 4D chess. He really knows what he's doing. And then after that, I was like, no, he doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, there's no such thing. Nobody's playing 4D chess that I'm aware of. If they're playing 4D chess, you aren't aware that you aren't aware of them at all. So I don't believe that this guy. I think it was a straightforward narrative, and it was a tragic tale about this guy who just kind of snaps. The year before the real riots ended up taking place in the streets. So you had about a year to prepare.
Yeah. But it was an interesting note because that's what it reminded me of, was the unreliable narrator, because it was so many different people's perspectives on this same guy, the big fish. And that's what it was similar to the Joker, in that it was his perspective on this event that was his life.
Well, I mean, I think there was some clarification. I mean, you saw at the funeral that the two Korean women were not, or Chinese. They were not Siamese twins, but they were twins. The one giant was not, and that guy was just in Rob Zombie's movie. The guy who plays the giant, and he's in an opening scene which is just horrific. He plays a guy named Tiny. And he was just in yesterday's movie, and then here I am watching him again today. But he's not 20 feet tall; he's actually 7 feet 4. So I tend to look at it a much more straightforward way. Yes, I enjoyed the mythological conversations, and yes, there was a lot of truth. It was just that there was some embellishment. I think that's as far. I think that's a reasonable summation.
Yeah,
for me.
Well. I don't really have any other specific notes, because all the other ones there's just so much to talk about with this film, and there would be hours of content if we went through each event and each story and all of it.
I think we've given it a good overview, sort of from a crow's nest sort of perspective and Overwatch. It probably is. We've been at it for almost an hour. So I think this is a good place to bring it to a close. I want to thank you for coming on the show very much. I appreciate you. And let's see if we can set up something again.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can have some sort of, semi-regular, Burton thing or something like that. Oh, not too much. The 2 movies maybe, but I'm not doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
No, we're not doing Charlie and Chocolate Factory. There's nothing really to discuss there. If you wanted to do Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that's a different vibe. But there's not much to discuss in the Charlie and Chocolate Factory.
I'd have to kick my own ass. No, that's not going to happen. All right, so thank you very much. Stick around for a second after the outro, and we'll talk. Everybody, if you see this in the replay, and I always do this at the end, assuming somebody's going to watch it for the full hour, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you think it's worthwhile. Jocelyn Jefferies, thank you very much. And thanks, everybody, for stopping in tonight. And we'll be back next week with, hold on. What do we got? Hold on. Aha! Well, we've got on Monday, coming back with another episode of Something Shitty. This Way Comes, when I attack The Phantom Menace, which is just a horrific movie. And then we're back on the 30th with another HBO Max fantastic movie. I've been dying to cover this for a long time. Underwater with Kristen Stewart. I can't believe I'm reviewing in a positive way or even touching a Kristen Stewart movie, but this movie kicked my ass, so I can't wait to cover it. And then on Thursday, July 1st, the Scary Summer Series returns with a pretty big panel as we tackle the all-time classic Jaws. Ooh. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.